So here's the sound effects. Font, make it actually slightly legible. All right. So yeah, this is okay. Move this over a bit. So what's going on here? All of the sound effects are synthesized, and to even produce another layer, I wanted to have the GUI sounds, and they all go to a 303 synth. So that produces a different acoustic space for the GUI stuff as well. And then the other stuff is all, it's kind of like subtractive, simple synthesis. Like basically like it's idiomatic, like it's stuff that's easy to do within pure data. So I did, like the sound design stuff here, I basically did from scratch. So I didn't borrow anything from, you know, whatever, RJDJ or stuff like that. I don't even think. I basically wanted to use stuff that pure data, like PD Vanilla, just did. So it produced its own sound because of that. I don't know how loud this is going to be. Is this guy on? Yes. So say for so I really just produced patches. It looks tricky, but really all these they're just patches that spit out those parameters over time. And then that's not entirely true. So this I'm using a 303 synthesizer here. That's sort of the one exception. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of messy, whatever. I'm a messy person. And that's actually, maybe it's related to the fact that I don't want to spend all that time making it pretty because I got better things to do. But then the problem is even me looking back on it now, I'm like, okay, if I have to change things, then I have to invest the extra time to figure out what the hell I did. So there's an alert sound. It doesn't change a lot over the intensity. I wanted to normalize my values from 0 to 1.0. So there's that. There's a, bleep sound. That guy kind of changes. He's a little longer at the top. Here's a menu open, pitch goes up, right? And it's a 303 sound. Pitch goes down, menu close. There's a rollover, and these are I'm laughing because it's a tablet-based game. Yeah, I know. Oh man, I didn't necessarily know that it was only going to be on tablet because I was developing on the PC. I didn't have access to that. I didn't even know what the actual platform was going to be until it was almost too late. And then I basically got access to a tablet, but it wasn't the same one that they were using. So yeah, it's hard to work like this and not even know what platform you're really developing on. So there's, typical stuff, buzzes. And that's all with this 303 kind of synthy stuff. Here's the engine. So this is more steady state where you've got a continuous change happening. I don't even know how to play this properly, so. Oh, okay, that was easy. So my idea was to sort of be somewhat inspired by the Jetsons, So it's got that little, and to be, because it's the graphics are not necessarily cartoony, but they're meant to appeal to high school students. All right. So it's all right. So that's partially being thrown into the reverb. I had load at one point for a different version of it. So there's the nanobot, which is a certain size, and then the picobot, which I believe is smaller. So that guy sounds a little bit smaller versus this guy, which also has the oscillating tone in there. That guy's not even connected. Because I was going to have the sense of load, but we didn't need it with the way that the game was working. I don't know. I mean, there's tons of sounds here. Oh, yeah. So there we go. So if you've ever played the Atari, the 2600 or the VCS, I was kind of happy with this one. Let's see, where is that guy? Which one did I hit even? So these are kind of fun because they're like, you know, they're different every time that you hit them. But of course, when you flatten them out to samples, they're always the same. So I just want to find that one. Okay, there's that guy there, and it looks like it's going into here.
You got some scrolling.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so as far as all of these are, you know, the normalized intensity values, and then here's the patch. So for an example here, I'm using V-line, which basically this is just giving a sharp attack and then decay over a half second. And the way that I'm getting that sort of, you know, like classic arcade explosion sound is that I just basically did sample rate decimation on all those noise. So I'm just doing sample and hold with noise. So it just sounds like it's being sampled at a lower rate, which sounds kind of like the old classic video games. So I was very happy with that sound. And then, you know, sort of small explosion, bigger explosion, right? And it's got the, you know, reverb and delay on there. So that's kind of, there's the delay. And you can see here I've got a switch function, which turns this patch on and off. So yeah, I was concerned about processing. So I don't have all these patches running all the time. I switch them on and off and try not to, say, clip out. Like I've got the, you know, it feeds the signal into the reverb, so it's okay to turn off where the signal came from. So yeah, I was concerned about the CPU utilization for...
Did you have any capping behavior for these sort of sounds?
Oh, like for a CPU?
Yeah, or yeah, just number instances, that sort of.
Yeah, because the that's another thing that would be really nice in PD is, and that was the thing that the Rockstar guys did really well, is that the CPU, you know, whatever, the profiling on PD is not so good. I don't know, has anybody gotten that so that it's actually usable? No. Yeah. So really what I did is that I would profile it libpd on the actual system. So I would put it into, so it wasn't interactive-ish and that much, but I would sort of see where there was a problem and then, you know, I'd go back there. But the main thing is that I'm just not doing anything that tricky here. And I know that with the band pass and low pass, and even with VCF, that's about as many filters as I would put in. So I just sort of had a rule of thumb, and then I wouldn't go above that. And I wouldn't try anything super crazy with feedback and those kind of things that can really blow up in your face. So yeah, I worked off a rule of thumb. Yeah.
And it didn't break when you played it, so it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So yeah, just it was fine.
What's your kind of approach when it comes to designing the sound?
Basic building blocks. Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, like I worked off of sort of what I thought PD did well, like out of the plain vanilla sort of sound. So I liked, you know, used the phaser, sawtooth wave, filtering, noise, so primarily subtractive synthesis, and then tried to make it sound not entirely, you know, super boring by using delay and reverb as my effects. So I sort of went with a kind of classic analog synthesis approach, yeah, and then with a little bit of the arcade game kind of sample rate decimation kind of thing in there. As far as like maybe from a creative standpoint, figuring out how I would make my sound design, I would just sort of screw around. So I just sort of have fun and make lots of sounds, and then see, and then I go back to them later. So I think it's important to, for me, anyways, I can't speak for anybody else. For me, it was important to basically play and come up with stuff that I thought was funny or weird, and then just throw out a whole bunch of stuff. And to tune things that I thought were close, and also to come back to things after a bit of time, because sometimes as an artist, you'll be working on stuff and then you get invested in it, and you're like, yeah, this is the best thing ever, and then you come back the next day, and you're like, ah, it's crap. And so that happened a fair amount. I mean, there's all sorts of, you know, sort of a Moog sort of thing. So that's like aliasing happening there. Yeah. See, it comes, to me, it comes alive. Like hearing it, and like every time triggering it, because it's coming out of noise. Like there's been so many times that I've worked. Anyways, with this one, you know, I just know that the samples will be the same coming out. So it's, I like hearing the original. You know, it's like hearing a sampled classic synth. That's the reason why you have a Euro rack or whatever you have, because it's got the sound, and there's a reason for that, right? And then here's my favorite. It's the Stuck Cat. So, and that's, you know, I did that as a download, and it's just like a couple of phasers, so a couple of sawtooth waves, and then this is just enveloping with a bandpass filter. So, I don't know.
If you didn't have to, if your kind of palette of sounds wasn't just these basic vanilla objects, what would you like to use? Like, what would you like to see available to you for you to, you know, explore more?
Yeah, well, I guess I did a little bit with the music, so I really like granulation. So that is something that I didn't do at all with the sound design, basically because I wanted to work within a limited space. In this case, so maybe in the future using that. Convolution is kind of cool. You know, if I could use that, that would be nice, and have that as not just a master, like, you know, sort of effect, but also an insert effect, because you can do neat stuff there. Physical modeling algorithms would be cool. Like Carplus Strong is really easy and cheap, but it would be kind of cool to be able to use like a, like, I don't know, 2D digital waveguide mesh, kind of where you're feeding stuff into another system and like having it feed back and kind of creating a little sort of modular kind of thing that way where the components feed each other. Step ladder. Yeah, you know, like getting a juicy filter. I mean, that was the thing that I thought that basically Fract OSC nailed. Like, that thing sounds good. It's got that sweet kind of like, you know, like low endy, juicy sound. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, hopefully that's, I don't know. I guess a lot of the times I do go sort of bottom up. I see what the system's capable of, and then I try to dance with those tools and figure out how to do something expressive with that, rather than getting too annoyed that the system doesn't do what I want to do. So yeah, I sort of do it that way. I like having like a limited palette of what functionally I can do with the sound and with the music. So yeah, that's the sound design there. Oh yeah, so then yeah, the question of how, like, so what I had to do with the music stuff was easy when I flattened it out, but you can see here, like, I've got a good number of sound effects, right? And I didn't want to have to manually, this is just a functional thing with PD, I didn't want to have to manually go through this and go like, oh yeah, here's this sound at intensity 0. Here's the sound at intensity 2.5. Here's intensity, like, so what I did, and I know it's not a really big deal, but what I did is I made a, like I did a little, I did a spreadsheet, and then I just spat it out to a queue list, and so that basically allowed me to spit out commands that were time-based in a really simple format for rendering out the files. And I think this one might actually, oh yeah, here. So here's the, and I would output this to text, I guess, but this is the spreadsheet file. So I basically did a little bit of, whatever, like Excel programming, and then I could spit out the name of the file from, I would go through the PD file itself and then just do a search for SFX underscore, like within the text version of the PD file. And then I just put that into a, I think I put it into a list, yeah, so I had different times that I would be rendering stuff out. And so depending on which pass I was doing, I would add that to my sort of render list. And then I just, because in this case, I had PD rendering it out in real time, then I'd just come back and then it would edit all the stuff, depending on how long it needed to be. And it wasn't, I'd have to go back. And then I used Wavelab to just do an automatic truncation. So if it was 4 seconds long, but the actual reverb tail ended at a certain point, then it would just automatically, truncate the sample out. So that's how I got it to, spit out, here it is, there it is at 0, 0.25, 5, 0.75, and 1. So that at least allowed me to get some, the fact that I put all that effort into making, you know, the sounds react from intensity 0 to 1. I quantified it down to 5 samples and automated that output process. So it actually worked quite well. And then that, when the developer was, you know, changing design and stuff, I could easily just spit out all the files again if they wanted them. So they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And, oh yeah, no problem. There we go.
So interesting, maybe first step for adoption of procedural audio, and that you could use it as a way to automate your asset generation process.
Yeah.
So you like you've done, you designed your sound, but you couldn't get it to run in the game, so you just automated loads of sounds that you could then still modify and spit it out again.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what DSP Anime kind of does, I think.
Exactly,
yeah, you just go to kind of like, you know, like, I want sounds that are kind of like this, and then it just spits out a whole bunch of variations. You're like, oh, nice. I've got a whole, you know, folder full of stuff that I think is pretty close. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of figuring out how to get the power of the computer to work for you. So, yeah, any questions? I mean, it's been a long time. Then I don't know, just sit out and actually chat with one another, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. I did that, and cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good.
All right, cheers. Thanks.